Hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Rome, and if you don't know me, why am I talking about this? Am I even qualified to talk about this? Then, yeah, let me introduce myself. My name is Jerome. I'm a Korean speaker, and I've been learning languages for a long time now. I can actually speak four languages. That's Filipino, English, Korean, and Pangasinan. And currently, I'm also studying Spanish. My Spanish is still not very good, but I can handle conversations. So, yeah, so that's who I am. And so, why am I creating this video? Why am I recording this video? Well, I have a friend who studied Korean like long ago. I think she even studied Korean way before me. But then she stopped studying Korean and I'm not sure how long she stopped studying Korean, but when we met earlier this year, sometime in January, we talked about language learning, and she mentioned this concern that she has, like she doesn't know how to get back to studying Korean after all those years that she stopped. And I guess this is something that a lot of people can relate to, not only people who are studying Korean, but people who are studying different kinds of languages. Like maybe you studied one language, and like for people right now who are, we're still mostly at home, right? Or I don't know about you, but yeah, for me, I'm still mostly at home. But maybe some of you started learning languages during the pandemic, and maybe throughout the course of doing so, you got burnt out because I know, I don't know, there could be a lot of reasons. And when later on you stopped, and then after a while you decide that you want to get back to it, and maybe 6 months have passed, or even a year has passed, or 2 or 3 or more years have passed, then the question is, how do you get back to studying the language that you part for a little while? And so in today's video, I decided I will be talking about how to get back to studying Korean or any other languages after years of slump. I think it's best to start where you're coming from. Like, yeah, because all of us might be coming from different positions or states or locations, or, well, you're coming from a different learning point. So maybe you'll learn formally and then you stop learning, or perhaps you learned via self-study and then you stopped, or it could be a mix of both. So I think um for you to understand how to proceed or how to move forward, it would be nice if you first identify where you are coming from. And I think that's just how it is in life in general. Like, you want to go to point B, and where are you at? Are you at point A, or are you at point C, or whatever? So I think that's a very important thing to do. So yeah, identify where you are coming from. Let's say, for example, maybe you learned a language formally. Maybe you took classes. So if you took classes, I think it would be much clearer for you. I mean, at which point you stopped. Like maybe you attended a class for 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, so on and so forth. Then in that way you have a better grasp of where you're going to, start again, or where you're going to pick up from. But then if you studied a language on your own, so you didn't take any classes, but you only self-studied, and there are many different ways of doing self-study. Maybe you used a book, or maybe you used a program by someone or by some organization, or maybe you self-studied by not following anything in particular, but you just studied whatever comes to you, or I think that's where it's going to be tricky. How do you identify which lessons you have already studied? I guess you'll know. I mean, if you're an organized person, I'm not. I'm not super organized. I try to be, but I'm not. I'm not super. But like, if you are very organized, then you will at least know what lessons you've already taken, or what grammar points, what words you already know, what grammar structures you've already learned. So I guess that comes to organization. But if you don't have that kind of organization, then it would be much more difficult. Like, if you stop studying for a year or two and you have no notes or anything, then it might feel like, do I have to start studying again? Or, do I have to start again from the basics? Because I think that's one of the things that most people who stop studying one language fear. Like, after not studying for a while, they fear that they have to go through the basics again. But it might not be the case. There are ways for you to identify where you are coming from. But I guess first you identify what you did before you stopped studying. And for some other people, it could be a mix of both. So maybe you had formal education and you also did self study. So yeah, I think you just have to identify where you're coming from. Are you a person who studied formally, just that? Or are you a person who did self study? Or are you a person who did a mix of both? So I guess that's something that you need to answer first. And depending on what the answer is to that, I think you can come up with a solution on how you can go back to studying Korean or whatever language it is that you are trying to learn again. So yeah, identify yourself. So for me, for example, if I would think Japanese, because I studied Japanese in the past. For Japanese, I actually did a formal study for 1 semester, and so I just learned the hiragana, katakana, a few kanjis. I think more or less 50 to 60 kanjis, and then I did self study. But my self study for Japanese wasn't that intense, so I wouldn't say that it's a mix of both, but more or less it's just the formal language training or just the formal education, which was, I would say, not even an N5 level for Japanese. So maybe it's just a like half of the curriculum for N5. So yeah, so in that way, I have a clear understanding of where I'm coming from, like what I already did in the past. So I think that's one thing that you can also try to do. So yeah. Okay, so I identify. I'm speaking for, yeah, I'm just blabbering, but okay. And then the next suggestion that I have after identifying what you did in the past. So actually, that's not really where you're coming from, but that's like what you did in the past. But you still haven't identified where you're actually going to come from, because that's what you did, but maybe because you stopped studying for a while, then your level is pushed back. Pushed back far behind. So maybe you studied until 2A, but because you didn't use it for a long time, you're like back to 1A again. So there's that. I don't know what to call it, but like in muscles. So our muscles, if we don't use it, we lose it. So I think that's also the same for languages. You just identify what you did, and next thing that I would suggest for you to do is to test yourself. So test your skills. And testing your skills, there are many different ways for you to test your skills. In Korean, I would suggest that you try to take standardized tests like TOPIK. So you can test your reading skills, your reading and comprehension skills, your listening skills, and even writing skills. Although I'm not sure how you can get your writing graded if you're not going to take the TOPIK formally. But if that's an option for you, then I would suggest that you try to take TOPIK officially so that you can get a grade for everything. But it's just a test, so it doesn't really it's not encompassing. So it's possible that you'll test high scores on the topic, but there are parts wherein you actually excel but cannot be perfectly tested by those exams. I mean, these tests are good, and they are really credible tests to assess where you're coming from, but it's not like, it's not everything. It has its pros and cons, and maybe that's for another video. But yeah, if you don't want to take the test officially, there are actually a lot of topic test materials available online from previous exams, and the answer key are also available online so that you can test yourself without actually going through the exam. I mean, you don't have to sit in the actual exam. So you can just check out. I think there's a website called Topic Guide. I think it's still available. So I think you can take tests as early. The latest test probably is 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, usually they upload the old tests on that website, so you can try them and you can assess yourself. So in a way, you can check what level you are currently at. But doing that doesn't really give you the idea of what to do next, right? It will just give you an idea of, okay, so based on these tests, I'm in topic there are 6 levels. So based on this test, I'm level 3, I'm level 4, I'm level 5, or level 1, level 2, level 6. So it will just give you that. But if you want to study further, then that doesn't really give you an idea of what to do next, right? But yeah, it's just a way that you can test yourself. Aside from that, actually, I am thinking that another way to test yourself is to actually have a tutor. So if you have a tutor, then depending on what kind of tutor you might get, like traditional tutors or non-traditional tutors, and there's actually a lot of tutors all around the world who would offer you their services to help you learn the language that you're learning. So as for me right now, I'm actually using Italki. So it's a platform where language learners and language teachers, professors, and community tutors alike are able to meet and you know um, teach or learn languages. So for me right now, I'm using Italki to learn Spanish, and yeah, I think that's something that you can also do for Korean or for whatever language you're learning. So say, okay, you already identified what you did in the past, and then you took a standardized test to assess where you're at somehow. But I think that's still not enough to give you an idea of what to do next. But it will give you a gist of, like a ballpark of where you are actually at. And I think the last item that you need to do to solidify that is to talk with a tutor or to get a language coach. It could be paid or not paid depending on the arrangements that you have. As for me, aside from my Talkie, I actually am using Hello Talk. You can use it for free. There's also premium, but you can use it for free and then meet people who are native speakers of the language that you're trying to learn. And if you do that, then perhaps you can make an agreement of how you'd like to study or how you'd like to improve your skills. But the downside of doing that is that your language partner might not be very good at teaching you the language. Like they might be really, really good at the language, but they might not be able to teach that to you. So it would still be very different if you get a language coach. But of course, language coach or tutors can cost a lot of money, so that might not be your thing. So yeah, you choose what you want to do. So get a tutor or just get a language partner. But yeah, if you don't have the money to get a tutor, then go for a language partner, and perhaps you can make a map of where you want to go and identify your weak points and strong points, and perhaps get help from your language partner. And yeah, at a certain degree, at a certain level, your language partner should be able to help you at least with the basics, and at least they can help you to get to a level wherein you can communicate more comfortably. But that's just that. And we can't really identify, the specific grammar points unless you've been talking for a really long time. And I think nowadays the difficulty with language partners is that not a lot of language partners would be committed for a long time. Although I have one and we've been talking for a really long time now, and every week we still do. But there's not a lot of people who are like that. There's actually more people who just study languages, like for a little while and then they stop for a long while. And yeah, you need to find someone who can help you long term if you want to take that path of using language exchange. Yeah, so I think that one will help, or a language coach. But lastly, if those two are not your cup of tea, maybe you can just, if you want to just do it everything on your own again, then you've already identified what you did. You took standardized tests, and maybe you can identify what you have already learned and what you still haven't learned. And for those that you've learned already, maybe you can identify which are your strong points and which points you need to review again. So that way it would take a lot of introspection, I think. You need to think a lot and yeah, assess yourself without an external person who'd validate what you're assessing. But I think that could work because that's how I've been doing so far in Korean in the past. Like when I studied Korean for one semester in the university and then I didn't really take formal schooling again. I was just not studying Korean until I went back to I not I went back. I went to Korea to live there for a little while and studied Korean. Like I didn't do any kind of assessment back then because I knew for myself that I only learned level 1A. So it was clear to me. But I was also at the same time listening to a lot of podcast episodes from Talk to Me in Korean. And during that time, I think my listening skills has improved a lot. And but there's no specific way to pinpoint what grammar point I already learned. So when I went to the cram school in Korea, I just took all the lessons, and if there were lessons that were quite already familiar to me, like I already knew it, I just continued listening to it because maybe there are grammar points that I thought I already knew, but I don't know them by heart just yet. So that's kind of how it went for me. But for you who are listening to watching this video right now, I'm not sure where you are coming from exactly, but what I'm trying to say right now are just thoughts and ideas about how you can identify what to do next. And speaking of what to do next, I guess I didn't really mention, but you have to first know what you want to do. Like, do you want to? If you studied for, I mean, if you had formal study before, do you plan on continuing on a formal study setup? Then in that case, it would be very straightforward. So you studied 1A at a certain institution, you finish that, you have a certificate for that, then you can just go on in the same institution or a different institution and pick it up from 1B. So I think it's very straightforward if what you did was formal study and you just want to continue doing formal study. But if that's not the case, if you did formal study, but now you want to just do self study or, yeah, not formal study, you can have a tutor and whatnot, or you just study on your own, then it's not really super tricky. But you just have to identify the path that you want to take. Like, oh, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Because you've already identified everything, right? Like, this is what I studied, this is my current level, and now where do I want to go to? What do I want to do with my language skills? What do I want to learn specifically? Then you decide if that's what you want to do. Or yeah, if you didn't do formal study in the past and now you want to do formal study, I think that's the tricky part, because if you didn't do formal study in the past and now you want to do it, I think you might need to take tests in the institution where you want to study so that they can assess your level, which is actually very good because you wouldn't have to do the hard work on your own, but you'll be helped by the institution where you're going to enroll at. But the thing is, although they may test you and they might say, oh, okay, you're now ready for level 2A, there might be grammar points in 1A and 1B that you don't perfectly understand, or there might be vocabulary words that are not very familiar with you. Although, languages don't really have to follow a certain, progression, I think. It depends on people and it depends on your principles and your belief system in language learning. But yeah, I think it doesn't have to be very structured in a way. But although I'm a person of structure, so I like studying, having a structure in mind. But yeah, although that's what I'm saying right now, actually, what I'm saying on this video is kind of structured, but not really, because I have notes here, but it's just like a page. These are the things that I wanted to talk about. And I think I already talked about it, but maybe the thoughts that I've shared are not super structured. And this video is actually very raw in a way. And yeah, if it's not super edited, I mean, yeah, I think this video will be uploaded in a not super edited format, but it's like a stream of consciousness thing. It's like a stream of thoughts thing. And yeah, I guess I kind of just talked freely about how to get back to studying a language after a slump. But if there are things that you want to ask, like very specific questions about language learning or about getting back to studying a language, and maybe I can answer them, or if there are topics that you want me to talk about in future videos, please let me know in the comment section and I'll try to respond to them. Like, I'll I'll key in the answer, or maybe I'll make a video about them if it's something that I could make a video about. Yeah, so yeah, that's the video, and thank you for watching. I hope you got something from this video, and yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye. Thank you. 감사합니다.